and share. All right. Is everybody able to see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I have to ask because sometimes in my craziness, that is my world, they don't always pop over like they're supposed to. And then I'm talking and there's no slides up there. Alexander, I see that you've popped in here.
Yes, sir.
All right, got you there. Okay, so I apologize for my voice being a little scratchy, but other than that, we're ready to get going. So we're continuing our talk. We're getting into beginning we're starting to learn about systems thinking. Now remember, systems thinking is just kind of a process. It's a way of viewing things around us. It is a subset of systems theory. Systems theory is the theory behind what makes systems thinking work. And so while you are learning parts of the theory, you're learning a practical approach to it. I'm not teaching you just the theoretical stuff, I'm teaching you the practical. But in this week, in week 8, we really need to kind of get an understanding of what systems thinking is. And that's why I go through a little bit more theory in week 8. So we were talking about Peter Singhi. He is a professor with MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He is one of the leading scholars in systems theory and systems thinking. And he's got a book out called The Fifth Discipline, and it is available on Audible. I enjoyed it. It is, I think, essential for leaders, modern leaders, because leadership, we can't lead the same way as we did back 20, 30, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We need to keep up with the times. Society changes, perceptions change. We're in a constant state of change. It's kind of like we're in flux. And so we need to keep up as leaders with what is current. And systems thinking is actually something organizations look for. Forbes had an article out in, I think it was May of this year, about how organizations look for systems thinking in their new hires. Yeah, what I think Indeed and LinkedIn both also discuss that as well. So it's definitely something that's necessary. Now, it's not the solution to everything. Not all of a leader's problems are suddenly solved because they're able to conduct systems thinking, but it helps them to be able to understand that problem more thoroughly. Okay, so Singhi said in the past, we talked about Nero in the fall of Rome, how he was fiddling while Rome burned. Well, we're fiddling while the planet around us burns, and yet we seem to feel that nothing can be done. He ties systems thinking because it is just a process. He ties it to leadership. He ties it to leaders that are dealing with climate change. Systems thinking can be tied to history, on viewing history. I've employed it and I've taught it using music as an example of how systems thinking can be applied to understanding what the artist was actually trying to convey to the listeners. So Peterson, he does talk about systems thinking and how climate change, people that are stuck in denying climate change, they don't view things in a very holistic manner typically. I'm not saying that to be disparaging towards them, but part of holistic seeing is yes, we analyze all the factors, then we step back and we look at how everything is interconnected. And by doing that, you can see that climate change is a very real thing. You can see that the long-term effects of it aren't going to be very catastrophic. And we need to make changes now in order to avert that and avoid that. So he discussed that decades ago, he felt that society was blind to how interconnected it was with itself. We've got this perception, thanks to Facebook and Instagram. Oh, I have 1,000 friends on Facebook. Okay, great. Break that sentence down. You have 1,000 quote unquote friends on Facebook. How many friends do you really have? I have like 800 or 900 people I'm connected with on Facebook, and I think 200 something on LinkedIn. And you know what? My core group, the people that I call my friends, probably is about 4 or 5 people. Those are my close friends. And then I've got people that I consider to be associates and then people that are acquaintances. And that whole group probably comprises maybe about 150 people when you include the acquaintances. I don't have 1,000 friends. And that's okay because I don't have time for 1,000 friends. Friendship takes effort, it takes energy, it takes time. And so to have an actual friendship, it's a form of a relationship. So we got to spend time in it. But when we use systems thinking as a tool, we can reduce our blindness and we can see I'm not as, my close interconnections are small. My broad, weak interconnections are strong because the weak interconnections, that's the 1,000 people on the apps and the services that I'm connected with. Now, there's another form that is interconnection. If we get our news, as most people do nowadays, on the internet, we could be getting it from a news source like ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, or we could be getting it from podcasters like Fair and Balanced or whoever might be the podcaster of the day. But we've got to be able to understand we need to fact check things. We can do that using our devices. We can fact check what someone says, even CNN. We can fact check what they say. And that's what we need to do because these weak interconnections that we get through Facebook and through the internet, misinformation, false narratives can spread like wildfire if we don't do the verification process of the information. Now, I don't verify everything. There are some things that I hear and it's like, okay, well, that sounds believable. Okay, it might be believable. And if I have the time, I'll look it up. There's other things where I go, wow, that's astounding. If that's true, that's earth-shattering. Those are the ones I sit and I look up. If they claim something that to be true or false about something that I'm really vested in, oh yes, I definitely go fact check it. And I fact check it by looking, are there other sources that are discussing this? And if so, what's the credibility of these sources? If you remember, when you're dealing in academia with credibility of sources, you have academic journal articles are like the first one, that and peer-reviewed textbooks, because they're peer-reviewed. Okay, you get the information, it's gone through multiple stages of the scientific method and peer review. So you can count that the stuff is factual. But when we get into news articles and news reports, it might be factual, it might not be factual, because we all know most news sources are biased one way or another. So it's up to us to sit there and go through that process of fact checking them. Now, this all does apply to leadership within an organization, I promise you, because everything you will be saying as a leader, your people can fact check in real time. So if you're a leader of an organization or of a team and you make a claim that is not true, people can call you out on it and you lose credibility. So what we do as leaders is we make sure that our sources are good. Anytime I give a talk, I have references and citations. I do APA 7 literally like all the time because I want to be able to prove to people I got this from these sources here. So they can look it up, or they can just know that I'm not making this stuff up. So as a leader, we've got to make sure that we are able to be fact checked, because we're going to be fact checked, whether we want to be or not. Emergent reality. Emergent reality is kind of an interesting concept. We can approach it from a philosophical or even a psychological point of view, and we'll kind of do both. Emergent reality. One reality is a consensus. We can look out our windows and we see that the sun is out today. We can walk outside and feel that it's cool. Or we can look at the weather app on our phone and see what the temperature is. We all can do that. We all got this shared reality that right now in this area, this is what the weather is. Now, if you're in Spain or in other countries or other parts of the United States, your weather could be different. But we can share other parts of reality, such as what day of the week it is, what time of day, even though it's a different time over in Spain. Laura can actually open up her phone and see what time it is here, and we can do the same there. So we can share that reality. So reality, as we see it, as we know it, that's the common points that we all share in our perspective, our perceptions. We all share these perceptions. So in an organization, reality is you're a leader, you have a team, you have leaders above you. But the work that you're doing, the time that you're spending with your people, you are developing a closer, a tighter bond and a tighter perception of what reality is for that team or that organization. So reality is indeed in a state of becoming. We can talk about what reality was yesterday. We talk about historical events. We can talk about 9/11. We can talk about World War II. That was in time. It is reality when we share it, so it's under that consensus umbrella. But the reality that's emerging is from this point forward. What does that look like? What is it becoming? And with systems thinking, we're able to break things down into their constituent parts, look at them intently using analysis. Then we step back a minute and a half and we look at it holistically using synthesis, I can't even talk, synthesis, and we can see the interconnections. Now, those interconnections, that right there, that's that emergent reality. How are each of the elements, so how Alexander, Crystal, Bonnie, Corey, myself, Jacob, how is everybody in this particular system right now interrelating? That interrelation, that's a reality that is emerging. It's in the process of becoming. Remember, emerging, sorry, I have to stop and take sips. I'm still getting over that cold. We lived in the past. Something worked in the past that took our uncertainty and gave us a sense of certainty. We as humans don't like feeling uncertain, but life is very chaotic. We can cling to the old status quo, as Clark puts it, and feel certain, or we can let go of that, live in the moment, and accept the fact that we can only kind of hypothesize the spectrum of what might come in the future as far as reality goes. And we have to make the best choices now. We got to look at what's impacting us now in our decision making so we can get to the best possible spectrum of possible potentialities. I know this may sound a little weird. That's because this is actually kind of even, it kind of goes metaphysical in some ways. It's very philosophic. So as a leader, you're building up that interconnection. You're building up that emerging reality of what that team is in the process of becoming. As a leader, you're there to help shape and guide it. You may have a goal in mind. I recommend goals to be kind of broad because if you make it really specific, more than likely, you're not going to attain it. But if you make it a spectrum, a range, then you've got an area that you can have that standard deviation come into play. You can have a hit or miss. you can kind of miss your original target, but still hit your goal, if that makes sense. So I make plans, and I put a generalized goal and I progress that direction. When I get there, I won't be exactly where maybe I thought it was going to be, but I'll be pretty close. And so that's how leaders can use systems thinking. That's one of many ways they can use systems thinking in developing their teams. As a subject matter expert in SME, Singh pointed out that organizational learning, and systems thinking must occur at the collective and individual levels. So you've learned about psychological safety for teams. You know that it requires you as the leader to implement it, to nurture it, but that everybody in the team needs to participate in it, that they're going through the levels, that they're obtaining more and more autonomy. Well, the same thing is true with organizational learning, systems thinking. You as the leader should be engaging in this, and you should be helping your team to be able to see the system that they're a part of and how it interrelates with other adjacent systems. In an organization, you have departments, you have teams. These teams are working on different projects. These projects merge together into a finished product that could be a new product or service. So my team isn't a system all by itself. It's a system working on something in conjunction with another system, another team. And so you want your team members to be able to see this wonderful interconnected web of reality. Singing claims that collective and individual levels are needed. Okay, we already said that. I don't know why I reinforced that, but it really is essential. You can't go in as a leader and you carry the whole burden of organizational learning, systems thinking. It's something you and your team should share together. Singh pointed out that China is the world's leader in reducing pollution. And this came through them applying systems thinking and organizational learning. China, one of the biggest manufacturers on the planet, also is the leader in reducing that pollution. Now, somebody could say, well, they're the leader because they had the most pollution, so anything they reduce would be significant. Okay, there's some truth there. But they're applying initiatives to try to think what is the best thing for the future of their region, the world, and they're working towards it. And they did that through looking at how different systems connect together and how the elements in those systems are connected. Now, think about over politicization. I can't talk. This cold has got me all messed up. Think about the over politicization in America surrounding climate change issues and also reducing pollution. Now, when you think about manifest destiny, this nation experienced manifest destiny during the westward expansion in the 1800s, when we were expanding from the East Coast out west. Okay, so we're coming up to the time of the gold rush, the 1840s. We're developing the railways. We thought that we had a mandate to expand through this country. And we just went marching along really without thinking about the future. Because think about the Trail of Tears. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Native Americans were warred against with the military. They were fought. They were imprisoned. They were marched on the Trail of Tears out to reservations. They were taken off of their land and put someplace that was not their land. Now, the people that were doing this, I'm not saying it was right or wrong at this moment. What I'm just saying is the people that were pushing manifest destiny, that we have the mandate to move throughout this whole continent, I don't think that they were really considering the future ramifications. I don't think that they even cared enough to think about what would this do to these indigenous people groups. Many of them wound up steeped in alcoholism, unemployment, all kinds of things. They were really bad things that occurred. It could have been avoided from the beginning. Now, as a leader, we need to think Do we have a manifest destiny attitude? Do we think that we in our organization have a right to go and do something? Or is it a privilege to be able to go do it? And we should be respectful of those around us. From that, you can see coming corporate social responsibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, things like that, that we now realize today are essential. But even 20, 30 years ago, they were still kind of foreign concepts for leaders to consider. So when it comes to climate change, we can see this manifest destiny attitude. When I was a teenager, a child and a teenager, I heard many times from many people in our family circle and our friend group that we could just cut down all the trees we want to, use all the petroleum we want to, that we could pollute as much as we want to, and we didn't have to worry about it. And they gave a reason why we didn't have to worry about it. And I don't want to be controversial, but it was definitely a religious reason. They were thinking that, hey, our world, as we know, it's going to end anyway. We might as well use up everything we can in the process, and then it'll be all better later. No, what we need to do is, yes, we can use the resources. We can use what we have available to us, but we need to do it responsibly, realizing everything is connected. An organization that has factories and produces chemical waste, nuclear wastes, pollution, air pollution, water pollution, affects the surrounding area, not just around their factory, but for a whole region. And then the water gets into a river and it goes downstream, and hundreds of miles away is impacted by a chemical spill. So we've got to think about how everything is so interconnected. We have a responsibility as leaders to think about the future. My son is 20 years old. The future is not mine anymore. It's his. It's you guys. It's your future. It's not my future. So I need to stop trying to make decisions that are just for my own gain, but I need to think about what's good for you. You're 20, 25 years old. What's the world going to look like for you in 20, 25 years? So that's the way systems thinking come into play into making larger decisions. You think about the consequences, you think about the benefits. Singy pointed out that the ecological system is the most important system society could ever be concerned with, because we drink water, as I'm going to do right now. We breathe air. We eat food. That food is made up of plants and animals that share this system with us. And we need to be careful to not harm that system so that we still have food, clean water, clean air. Singy noted that society has been on this backward trend since they one second, I'm trying to figure something out here. I've been on this society. I've known that this has had this backward trend, I guess, when they place businesses, nations, and economies or politics as being more important. There was a typo in that sentence. I am so sorry, class. When we place our own profit, our own people group, our own well-being, our bank accounts, our political affiliation as more important than taking care of the ecological system around us, we actually set ourselves up for difficulties in the future. Decisions that were made 20 or 30 years before World War II led up to World War II. Decisions that occurred 10, 15 years before World War I were all setting the stage for World War I. Anytime there's a major conflagration, a warfare, you look back 10, 15, 20 years and you see everything was falling into place that would cause that to occur. Systems thinking is a way that helps us to be able to see this. We've got to think about the future. That emergent reality, we need to build that emergent reality responsibly, not just for me, but for all of us. Because it's not just me on this planet. It's all of us on this planet. Teamwork and network, team and network. I really apologize. I'm trying to figure out why I know I had a cold when I worked on these things. I'm wondering if I was on cold medication or something. You guys should be laughing. If I was in your shoes, I'd be laughing at your professor right now. So teamwork, um, we're gonna skip that. I don't even know what I was writing there. Organizations are abstract concepts, whereas teams and networks, these are not abstract concepts. Okay, there, it's more clear now. Organizations are abstract. Why? Because you can't really sit down and it's not an actual thing. Okay. An organization is a bunch of people working towards a common goal. A team is a small group of people that has a very specific goal. They can clearly define their goal. Networks of people are also clearly defined. But an organization is kind of this abstract idea. In legal parlance, we call it an entity. They've got rights. They can sue, they can be sued, they can enter into contracts. And yet I always go back to organizations are kind of like this Frankenstein's monster. It's this creation that humanity has made, and we used human beings as the model. You have senior leaders, you've got middle leaders, you've got workers in the body, you've got the nervous system, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, you have the organs and the cells in the body. It all works together. Every system in a human body works together to form the human being. Well, an organization is made up of teams and networks of people, but the organization itself, it's kind of one of these things that doesn't exist without the teams, without the networks, without the people that make it up. An organization no longer is actually there. The building might still stand, but it's not an organization. It's just an empty building. So teams and networks can cross boundaries. Teams and networks can facilitate change. Crossing these boundaries can take decades. Things like learning to walk and talk when we were toddlers, these are based on our experience. We learned them. When we are trying to walk and we fall because we do something wrong, there's an instantaneous feedback loop that occurs. We know we made a mistake, and so we pick ourselves back up and we go at it again. The older we get, the further into the future the consequences become. Whereas a child, if I made a mistake while I was riding my bicycle or walking, boom, instantly I had the negative feedback I knew because I fell. I can learn or I can just repeat it. As an adult, I do things and the consequences may not come around for years, sometimes months, years. And then when the consequence finally does come, I don't know where it came from. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking around. But when I go back into myself and go back through my years on this planet, I can see, that's the point where I made that decision that led to this consequence. So you have complex learning events, and these occur when the cause and effect relationships are no longer close together. Remember, cause and effect. You're trying to learn a bike and you do something wrong, the instantaneous feedback, you fall. Well, that's that cause and effect relationship. Now that we are more complex, because the older we get, the more people we know, the more decisions we've already made, the more decisions we are making, the more decisions we still have to make. There's more variables at play. Now that consequence pushed out into the future. So he pointed out that in the arena of a relationship, the feedback might only be perceived later. What he's talking about there is if you've got a good friend and you're in a working relationship with your friend and something in that relationship falls apart and the friendship begins to disintegrate, the feedback from that may not come to your attention until months later, when now that friend is perpetually mad at you and refuses to even come around you. The consequence is you've lost the friendship. Another consequence is the project you're working on no longer is working. You're not working on it together. It's kind of dead in the water. And as a leader, we want to make sure that the people we're in relationship with our teams and our coworkers, that we maintain those relationships, because if we don't, our consequences can be our projects and our goals we're working on professionally and in the organization could easily disintegrate. Singhi also discussed that The relationship between the action and the consequence is a metric that we use that is used to determine whether it's a complex learning event. So remember, if the consequence is immediate, then that's going to be, and as he said, let me go back, a cause and effect relationship. The more complex it gets, the further into the future that consequence now moves. Many teams and organizations make decisions, and they must wait a bit before the consequence can be perceived. So they make a decision and they have their next monthly meeting and they give a status report, and there's still no real movement in this area. Finally, at a quarterly meeting, they begin to see the charts moving. Now there's some profit coming in based on that decision they had made. That's why decisions in organizations take so long. They're so complicated. To get your return on investment to increase substantially, you can't do that instantly. Even as just an individual, there are things in my life that are so complex. When you look and you see how far out the decision and the consequence, how far apart are they? I've got to think wisely now, because in a year, my financial situation could be impacted negatively or positively. This relates directly to complex social dynamics, and many organizations have shifted to set up teams within which their employees can work. So the team setting is kind of a new thing. 30, 40 years ago, you didn't have teams quite like we know them today. The way the teams are structured, we got a leader, you got people with their specializations, they're all working on a project together with their specializations. This right here allows us to be able to forecast different potential outcomes or consequences more easily. If we all made up a team and we all had our own specializations and we're working on that one project, I myself looking at it could see maybe these are the possible outcomes, or these are the perils, or these are the problems that could happen or arise. But each one of you could see some. If we put them all on the table, now we've got a better view of what reality, that emergent reality, could be 3 months in the future. So as a leader, you should want that. You should want to bring your people in so that you're able to understand the decisions you're making, the goals you have, and how you're going to get those two to come together. To better understand the concept of a team, I want you to think about a sports team, which is pretty easy. A lot of you are in sports. Accountability is shared by the group. Okay, now in like track and field, it's the individual that wins, that gets the gold medal. But with a soccer team, everybody on the soccer team, or a baseball team, everybody's got their role to play. They have what they specialize in, and the group either succeeds or fails as a group. You don't see somebody winning a baseball game and only one person gets the credit. No, the entire team gets the credit. The same thing in organizations. Teams in an organization include shared accountability. They also share internal conflicts, different perspectives, different values. They bring these things to the table, and some of these could cause serious conflict. As a leader, you got to be able to mitigate that. To mitigate it, you have to know about all these different things that each person brings to the team. And then you got to forecast what the future might look like. Now, I could do that as a leader, but it's going to be limited. But if I do that with my team, where we, in that shared accountability, talk about what the internal conflicts are causing, where they're coming from. If we talk about how we view things differently, our different perspectives, if we talk about how we value different things in different ways, we can work more as a unit and avoid pitfalls and find success. A team is a functional concept of involving individuals who have been brought together. You bring together individuals, and a team is where they all literally function to serve out that purpose. I could hire each one of you for your specialty, but if I don't put you into a team, it's going to be real difficult to get you really to work together. There's teams at every level. You hear about the C-suite, CEO, CFO, CPO, all those. That's a team of senior leaders. You have teams in every aspect of the organization. And those teams actually form associations with each other, almost like a team made up of teams. And then finally you get to the organization. That's what that systems thinking is. You see each person in their team, so they're a little circle. Then you see each team is a circle, bigger circle. Then you see the department is a bigger circle. And finally, you get all these circles and they're in one giant circle. That's an organization. That's why it's abstract. We can draw it out using spheres and circles, but it's still at the end of the day, it's something that became out of a whole bunch of small components, kind of like a human body. I'm made up of trillions of cells, yet I'm one individual. My liver, my gallbladder, they're all different organs, but they all work together in one organizational package. Well, the same thing inside of an organization. All these people and all of these teams relating together, networking, shared accountability. Yes, there are internal conflicts are going to happen. And as a leader, you're going to have to learn how to mitigate those. Dealing with different people's perspectives, different political views, different values, different religious systems. That's fine. All that difference is okay because it brings a form of vibrancy to the organization. Did you know in nature, if you take a plot of ground and you reduce it to being monoculture, meaning only one species of plant there, you'll basically kill that plot. Because you got to think, there's little microbes, there's little insects, bigger insects, little animals, different types of plants. Different types of plants protect against different types of insects. And so if you mix them all together like they're supposed to be, it actually forms a protective barrier and it can endure. It can produce. But when we bring it down to just one particular type of plant or animal, we actually deplete the resources in the soil and make it ineffective. Organizations are the same. That's why diversity is so beautiful, so wonderful. And I'm going to pause for a quick announcement. My internet is in the process of being set up. The tech had to come back because for some reason my apartment complex is weird. He's going to be coming here in the next probably 20, 30 minutes. When he does, I'm going to probably try to take the computer into another room or something, but there will be someone in here making noise. I just wanted to forewarn you ahead of time. I didn't want you to be surprised by suddenly there's extra noise over here. Now you know why. So that's why the team is a functional concept of different individuals who've been brought together. If this sounds interesting to you, look up biomimicry. There's a great book on Audible about biomimicry. I forget the author's name off the top of my head. It's literally the tip of my tongue, but it's excellent. She talks about this, taking a plot of ground, reducing it to a monoculture, how it kills the soil. It removes all the vitality. But when you bring it back to the way it's supposed to be, with everything mixed together, that it becomes vibrant. It's safer for the organisms there. Organizations are the same. We should be able to have an organization made up of people of all political affiliations, all religious associations, all cultural backgrounds, all kinds. We got strength there. We got all these perspectives, all these views, all these values. It can make an organization survive. And let me move this because there we go. For a change to be created, the individuals must see that the change is something that needs to be done. So if you need to enact change in your organization or in your team, you need to present to the team members or the people in the organization the reasons for the change, what it's going to fix, and what the potential outcome is going to be. You get enough people involved, you can achieve that outcome. If you don't, then you just had a goal idea that you weren't able to enact because you couldn't get anybody to sign on with you. So acceptance of the norm contradicts change development. Remember back to Timothy Clark. Clinging on to the status quo is not good. That's why you want people to develop through psychological safety to be able to get to that challenger safety stage where they can challenge the status quo. We need to challenge the way things have always been done because it's not working anymore. And there's something new that has to emerge from that chaotic moment. So you're in the past, you're doing it one way, it worked at that moment. As humans, we remember that. So we wind up in another chaotic moment. Change is in the air. That's chaos. We want to go back to what solved it before, but that's not going to work anymore. Because now we have zillennials, millennials. We've got Gen Zers. We have, oh, that is zillennial. We got Gen X, that's me. And we still have some baby boomers out there. Everybody's a bit different. The needs of the younger generations are different from the older ones. The perceptions are different. Organizations need to enact change, and they've got to challenge that status quo, that norm. Singh noted that change is feasible when a team has time to reflect on the progress and the process. Instant change is something I don't trust. I never have liked instant change. I avoid it. I do not avoid change. I welcome change, but I like change to go in its increments. Now, some increments seem more abrupt than others, but overall, when I look back over the period of time that change was occurring, each of these increments occurred at the right speed. That's good. I feel safe. I don't feel uncertain. I let go of the status quo, release the status quo, accept the emerging reality that's becoming, and I'm okay. But everybody involved needs to be able to see that progress, that process, and to be a part of it. Reflection is virtually non-existent in Western businesses. It's a fast-paced business. It's a technology-centric world. We've got to take time to reflect. There's been a buzzword around in management for a decade or two about being mindful. It's a good idea, and I agree with it. It was taken from Eastern mysticism, Buddhism, Taoism, things like that. It's about taking a moment to just consider the moment, to be in the moment, to understand what you're feeling at the moment, to consider someone else has feelings in this moment, that my actions could impact negatively or positively somebody else, to consider that as being mindful. Some people have pushed back saying that mindfulness is, we don't need that in business, yet we do. If more people were being mindful, we would have less problems with a diverse workforce. We'd have less problems with making people feel included, with making people feel viable, equitable, equal. So we got to sit back and think. In many of the world's religions, I'm saying this as a theologian, because as you know, that's one of my first specialties, is that we live and act in a way that we ourselves would like to receive from other people. So I'm treating other people the way I would like to be treated. And that's what we need to do as organizations. If an organization wants to be looked upon favorably, then they should be looking at other organizations favorably. That doesn't mean giving up that competitive advantage, by the way. You can still have a competitive advantage, be striving to keep it, maintain it, keep it, gain it, and still be nice, polite organizations with all the rest of the organizations out there. Learning habits. The learning process includes reflection, acknowledgement of our bad habits, and acknowledgement of inefficient processes. Reflection needs to lead to changes in the way we approach things in the future, whether it be decisions or processes or approaches. Our reflection needs to lead to a new way of doing something. Singh noted that blame and guilt are directly related. And by the way, just as it was with psychological safety, blame and guilt are not a good thing in systems thinking. We want to avoid those. They're not necessary. But in a purely dictatorial, authoritarian form of leadership, they thrive. But once you bring in humble leadership, servant leadership, transformational leadership, transactional leadership, then blame and guilt are nothing but a hindrance. Blame is what is placed on another person. I'm blaming this person because our project failed. Guilt is what we ourselves feel. If we feel that we somehow made it so the project failed, we feel responsible. We feel that guilt. Alone, blame and guilt do not provide the sufficient direction that's needed for lasting change. So why impose that on ourselves or other people? It's not going to provide us with what we need. It's not going to get us to be able to make our changes for the future. There's something else that's needed. Give me one second. I think the tech. Okay, give me 1 second. I just gotta check my internet, see if it's up because he said it should be working now. Let me check it. I apologize, but I do not see my internet. Nope, I don't see it. Let me tell him I don't see it. All right, so we're working through two things at once here. We're working through learning about blame and guilt, and I'm trying to get my internet up because I'm running on one of my phone's hotspots. All right, blame and guilt. So what is needed is to acknowledge the problem, acknowledge who caused it, and then seek the deeper reasons that the issue occurred. So as a leader, we acknowledge that there's a problem. We find out where its root is, so who caused it, and then why did it occur? It may not be that somebody should be receiving blame. Now, they might be the reason that project is now not succeeding, but that doesn't mean they need to be blamed for it. There's a big difference. Blame carries with it a sense of judgment. The reason is just that, it's a fact. If a project fails and I'm the reason it failed, then that's plain and simple. There shouldn't be blame, there shouldn't be guilt, but we can now seek solutions. One metric to work through this blame-guilt paradox is whether a different individual would potentially feel or do the same thing perceived as being blame or guilt worthy. So if as a professor, I could easily feel that I have failed, that I'm guilty because I did not get the last couple slides taken care of properly, that I let my cold and the craziness of my life, they impacted me. I could feel that guilt. But no, what Singing is saying is, let me think, another individual. So what, say another professor, Dean Kelly, if she were in this situation, would there be a possibility that she might make an error on a slide? Well, yeah. Then it's not something I should be feeling guilt for. It's something that happened. It's a reason. There's a mistake. I own up to it, but I don't have to bear that emotional baggage now. There's still plenty of personal responsibility. But more than an individualistic approach, you need to work through these problems with the people involved with them. So the whole team. Blame/guilt can freeze a person's ability to change. If you want to stop organizational change, if you want to stop personal growth and change, if you want to stop change in your family or your social circle or whatever, bring blame and guilt into the picture. It will freeze the ability to grow and change so quick. It also reduces psychological safety because now that team becomes psychologically unsafe because built is what happens when you put blame and guilt together, built. But when you put blame and guilt into that team, now it's an unsafe team. This can paralyze people emotionally. It can take people who otherwise are innovative, creative, that they're really at the top of their game, and now they become self-censored. They're not participating in the development process. They're not participating in the decision-making process, in the coming up with new ideas. They wall themselves off. How the individual perceives things, meaning problems, can emotionally hinder the team's ability to change. So not only is the actual guilt and blame that's put upon somebody or upon ourselves, that harms it, that slows the change down. But even if a person just perceives it, that's why as a leader, we've always got to be thinking about, how am I coming across to the people around me? Am I coming across like I'm empathetic, knowledgeable, empathetic, still human, that I make mistakes, that I have a good heart? Or am I coming across that I am a perfectionist, therefore you need to be a perfectionist? Are we hindering the people around us? Are we making them wall themselves off? Emotional responses occur extremely quick. Now, we have in our mind, and we're going to be going over this a little bit more when we get into the book by Oshri. In our mind, we got logic, we have reason. Our logic, let's say it's my right hand, and well, I said logic and reason. Logic and reason are one thing. Sorry about that. That was a faux pas. We got logic or reason, and we have emotion. But our emotion is not separate from our logic/reason. Rather, as Oshri says, our emotion is nested inside of our logic/emotion, our reason, and our logic or reason is nested inside of our emotion. Now, normally this would sound like a circular argumentation. It's not. It's not a fallacy. What this is, our brain processes things in different centers at different places at different times, but they all connect together. So the parts that process logically, the parts that process emotionally, they are firing off, working together in concert. So really, we are being logical and emotional at the same time. We are being emotional and rational at the same time. What we put out, what we demonstrate, could either be that of being logical and rational or emotional. And there's a time and a place for each one of these things. This response occurs in mere fractions of a second. We also, when something happens, we process our emotions and our logical processing at the same moment. And we also process socially. And there is no delay. That happens instantaneously. Now maybe you understand why at times as a human being, it's easy to feel confused about a situation. Because literally, we are confused. We have all the emotions, we got all the logic and reason, everything going off at the same moment. What do we do with this? Well, that's why we go through the years of growth and development. We learn how to interact with society. We learn about reality. We begin to develop ourselves. Then we go to school to become a leader in a field, and we learn about how to be a leader, how to make ourselves take that moment and be mindful. So it all comes back. We ourselves have got to find that well-being, that work-life balance inside our own head as well. Team leaders and teams themselves, they must ask themselves hard questions regarding the assumptions and the norms. An assumption is a claim without evidence. Yes, but assumption is also when we go in the preconceived notions that we have about a setting, a situation, or a person or a people group. We all possess those. Those are called assumptions. But we have to question them because we need to find the evidence that backs up the assumption before we can actually use it in a valid way. It's kind of like writing a paper. I've written many times in feedback that a claim without evidence is just an assumption. Same thing as a leader. If you're going to say something, make sure you got the evidence, the facts to back it up. Otherwise, You're just saying an assumption to your team, and it could mislead them. Singh mentioned that when a person says that they do not have time to deal with the emotional side of a matter, whether it be this or a decision-making process, or how to change inside themselves, what they're probably actually expressing is that they don't know how to change. Because you see, we have the time to change. When it comes to decision making, when it comes to the process of change, we have the abilities to be able to do that. But maybe we don't know how to employ it, how to bring it together so that's what occurs. Each person literally has the same amount of time every day, 24 hours a day. Matter of fact, I could have a $100 bill and I could go out and spend it right now, and I could go and I could make another $100 by working. I could earn another $100. If I have an hour of time and I spend it doing something, I can never get that time back again. Time literally is the most precious thing there is. We spend it, but we can't make more of it. People must be self-aware, self-reflective. In one of my freshman classes in TCM 1000, which I'm sure you've taken, we talk about self-awareness, about self-reflection. Even in this class, I've talked about leaders needing to do self-assessments, because as a leader, you've got to understand yourself. Being self-aware means that you understand why you're having the emotion you currently have. If I'm feeling mad, I can be self-aware and I can understand why I'm feeling mad. Maybe I don't agree with the reason I'm mad, but I can understand that's the reason. I can identify it. Self-reflective is then saying, should I be mad? So self-aware is like the why. The self-reflective is the should I be like this? Lack of emotional stability leads to poor decisions. Plain and simple. We have got to be, as leaders, we've got to be able to be emotionally stable. That doesn't mean that we don't feel emotions. We don't become a Vulcan in Star Trek. But we don't let that overconsume us. There have been times in my life where something has happened and I let anger or I let other emotions well up inside of me, and I didn't keep a close rein on them. And it impacted the lives of the people around me. If they're the people that work for me, that's actually kind of catastrophic. So I, as a leader, need to learn that stability. I still have the emotion. I still feel sad, mad, glad, happy, whatever, but I don't have to go off the deep end with it and overexpress it. I can draw it back. And the way we do that is we use that logical side of our brain, that part that deals with reason. And we say to ourselves, I shouldn't overexpress this. Let me tone that down. So the fifth discipline, which I briefly mentioned earlier, the full title is the fifth discipline. I said to mention it should be the fifth discipline, the art and practice of learning organizations. Singing, he said that reflection is an integrating element. You need that reflection. It integrates in the positive aspects of the emotion, the reality that is emerging, and your response to it. Reflection helps draw that all together into a coherent package. Personal mastery involves being centered on oneself. That doesn't mean being selfish or self-centered in a negative way, but rather I am centered on me, my emotions, what I'm thinking and feeling. I'm self-aware in the moment. I'm regulating myself in the moment. I'm being mindful in the moment. I'm being present. Then I can say I have personal mastery. I've been able to master these different parts of myself. I can then do things and say things that say this is the reason this project failed, instead of putting blame on somebody or guilt on myself. Personal mastery means that you're able to be emotionally grounded and centered. These things should matter to me as an individual. That's what I'm focusing on when I do the personal mastery. I'm mastering things that are important to me as an individual. I am very concerned about my emotions. I'm very concerned about my perceptions. I'm concerned about my life. I'm concerned about my work. I'm concerned about the people around me. I then have got to be able to be focused on what is necessary in that moment. Do I express the emotions, or do I express the logic, or do I express a little of both? We must know our shortcomings. We have to understand where our weaknesses are. By now, you all have seen the SWOT, the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's like a little table you can graph out. Well, we need to do that for ourselves as leaders. What are my strengths as a leader? Or if we're a team member, what are my strengths as a team member? Where am I weak? Am I being too emotional when I deal with problems? Or am I being too detached and like too over logical? I'm like relying on my logic way too much, and I seem like I don't care now. Because a person that doesn't express any emotions almost seems like they're apathetic. And as a leader, we should be empathetic. Understanding the gap between one's vision and reality. Reality is the truth. If we can verify it, then that's reality. We can verify gravity is a real thing. Now, on different parts of the world, when on this side it falls down, and the other side it falls to them down, but to us it'd be up. So perspective comes into play. When we're looking at reality, we could be looking at the same truth, but have a different point of perception when we're looking at it. That's why we want to have multiple people with diverse perceptions. We want them to look at this, their perspectives. Bring to me what you saw. We're watching a drama play out before us on a stage. We all are in our seats. If I stay in my seat, I have one perspective. But if I get up during the breaks and the intermission and afterward, and I go talk to everyone else I can about what we just saw, we can share what we just witnessed. Now what we have is a better understanding of that reality, that truth that we just saw. So personal mastery is a collective and individual understanding of the team and personal vision. You've got to understand your emotions. You've got to understand your logic. But where are you walking to? That's that personal vision and team vision. Where do you envision yourself in the future? As a person, do I have a mission statement? Do I have a vision statement? Organizations have them. I recommend team leaders develop a team mission statement and a team vision statement because it helps them be able to focus in and develop that personal mastery inside that team. Now, mental models. I hinted that we were going to talk about them, and now we are. Mental models deal with knowing oneself through reflection, knowing your own shortcomings. Where am I weak? Where am I strong? This allows leaders to see what assumptions they have. Also, knowing one's shortcomings. An assumption would be a shortcoming. An assumption is, I think that everybody with purple hair spends too much money. Well, that's an assumption. It's also a stereotype. So a stereotype is a type of an assumption because not everybody with purple hair goes and spends too much money. We've got to double check those. And our mental models, it's how we're able to make sense of the world around us, and that's called sense making. It's how we're able to understand the situations. It's also how we're able to understand people and events that occur. I have a mental model of what a professor should be like because of the professors I had before me. So I need to develop my mental model through understanding my own reflection. Where did I get this model and how can I improve it? What I've done is I said, I've seen how professors were good. I've seen how professors were bad. I'm going to try to avoid the bad and try to do the good. But that only gets me so far because then I have to say, what about my own actions? What about the things that I do that these professors never did? Now I'm a new territory. I have to turn to different mental models. If you ever made a model as a kid, you make a small replica of something that's larger, and it's not a working model necessarily, but it gives you an understanding. Kids play with toys. These toys are mental models that they use in the development of their brain. As a leader, we have to understand the difference between a mental model and reality itself. My mental model could be people with purple hair spend too much money. Reality is that people with hair, period, can spend too much money, and people with hair, period, can save money. That people are not set in stone. I can't make these prejudgments coming into something. I can't make the assumptions anymore. Team learning is a concept of a mental model applied to the team. We are trying to develop a model of the team that we present to our team here and say, this is what we need to become. We need to be able to interact. We need to be able to share. We got shared accountability, shared responsibility. We share our perspectives. We give out inclusion. We give out acceptance. We give equity. We welcome diversity. There's a nice give and take there. That's a good mental model that we then can take and apply to a team. And now we can't just make our team do it. We have to guide them to the process of change so that they can become in line with that mental model. And at the time, it's not a personal mental model, it's a team mental model. Organizations can do the same thing, which actually you can see in their mission statement and their vision statement. They're literally giving you a model of what they want to be like. And the mission statement and the vision statement become the mental models adopted by everyone in that organization, or at least that's the way it should be. Learning is an individual and a collective event, and it happens simultaneously, okay? Knowing what shortcomings. Why does that keep popping up in here? What did I do? Class, I'd be laughing my tail off right now if I was you. I don't know where this came from. But anyway, remembering that we got to remember that learning is individual and collective at the same time, meaning I am on a team. I'm the team leader. I learn just by myself as being on that team, but I also am part of the team, and the team together as a system is learning. And so you have two stages of learning happening here. The person and the group, the social circle they are a part of. Systems thinking is the final discipline that Singh talks about in his book. And this acts as a binding agent for the first four. Okay. The first four, we went through the mental models, personal mastery, those are all parts of the discipline. I'm trying to find the first one. Yeah, personal mastery and mental models, system and organization learning, I think is another one. They're all parts of that discipline, but it's systems thinking that helps us bind them all together because we're able to see how these independent elements now interconnect together inside of this team, this organization. It helps us understand the complexity of the world, of society, the organization, the team, and even myself. That's how good systems thinking can actually be as a tool, not the end-all solution. There are other ways of viewing things. There are other ways, other systems, or that's a bad word to use here. There are other avenues to take in how to view reality around us. But systems thinking is a good one. Hold on, class, 1 second. Jordy, be quiet. I'm in class right now, but feel free to do what you need to there.
It should be up and working. It's to its default settings.
Okay, well, let me see here real quick. Just give you this phone, I'll unlock it and you can go into there and see if it's working.
It's going to take a picture of that back.
Oh, that's what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that was his name. And the 9 VE, is that on there?
9V.
There's a 9EB, there's a 9EC.
And it's RVE, the last ones. Right there.
Okay, give me 1 second, class. Now it's under a whole nother thing here. I don't know the password of the original. I'm there. Oh.
Yeah, actually, I have it right here for you. Right,
You know,
right there.
thank you. I appreciate that. U N G T 7 com C